they have the variable coordinates needed to get to the branch ship? Now all that's needed is to get there. But before that, a few things need to be reported into. They made their way past the mountains of shipping containers and back to where Mephistopheles was docked. Virgilius and Charon were on a bench, waiting for them. They saw them approach. Charon had to fight one enemy while they were waiting for Dante and the Damned Dozen, and that enemy is crushing boredom. Charon mentioned that she ate ice cream. It was cold but disappeared fast. I suspect that she meant that she ate it quickly before it melted. This caught Don Quixote's attention, asking if it had the putrid scent of the sea. Charon didn't know what that meant. Don Quixote compared it to a flavour not unlike licking a fish. Charon thought that Don Quixote was stranger than she thought, if she licks fish. Well, if the taste was bitter, then that's one thing that hasn't changed, as Lapis, who Charon used to be, prefers her confectionery to not be too sweet so that she could enjoy it more. Then Virgilius noted that by the looks on their faces, something happened, wanting an explanation. Don Quixote offered to do so, but he doesn't want the full story. He only wants to know what intel was learned and to make it short. Ishmael told him that they know where the Golden Bar is. It's in a Lobotomy Corporation branch facility in the middle of the Great Lake. Seriously, Ishmael, even Heathcliff would be able to figure that out. Virgilius shares my feeling about that. He wanted to know if they learned anything else that he didn't already know. Faust told him that they obtained the variable coordinates for said branch facility. Roger then believed that he'd say, "That's it? That's all you got?" They went through a lot of trouble to get that. And he didn't say that. He saw it as good enough. It almost made him want to applaud them all. Rodia was surprised by this. Then Otis wanted to bring to his attention what happened during the search for the source of that intel. Virgilius understood what she meant, likely because he knew that this wasn't over yet regarding Ishmael. He told Otis that he'd deal with that and to stay out of it. Ishmael was silent, and Virgilius noted her impatience. It appeared that his earlier consultation didn't ease her anxiety. Ishmael confirmed that it didn't. She doesn't even know what's happening in this mission. They're wading blindly through a misty sea. Yet they're shoving their noses in everything, everywhere. It's driving her up the wall. I can see why Virgilius needed to deal with this now. As if it gets worse, she'll not just be up the wall, she'll be crawling up the ceiling looking possessed and spraying green vomit. He told her to relax. She knows that there's no direct path in the Great Lake. He didn't expect a lack of patience from one that's lived most of her life at sea. He also figured out that the wound on Dante's shoulder was also a consequence of her impatience. Ishmael hinted that it's more complicated than that. He saw it as an unintentional mistake, which was true, as she was aiming for Smee, not Dante. If it wasn't her throat, wouldn't be intact. Yes, if it was intentional, then she's unlikely to remain alive. And that's likely due to Aldis taking direct action. Faust was patiently waiting for him to continue, knowing more but choosing not to speak. Virgilius asks why Ishmael failed to look further ahead. By now, she must have realized what awaited her at the end of that journey. That contract clause that she's impatient about was bound to make an appearance as long as she followed Dante's misadventures. Yes, we get it, Virgilius. You have low expectations about all of them. Anyway, her competitive attitude against Dante would only delay that. Ishmael noted that it happened 4 times. It's not a very big sample. Okay, technically it's more 3.5 times, as while Rodia, Sinclair and Yi Sang's unfinished business was dealt with, Gregor's is still unresolved, as Herman is still out there, working for Encore. Apparently, Virgilius is good at reading those trends. She then told him that if he's so sure about it, then she won't let frustration get the better of her. She won't step out of line any more than she needed to. Likely referring to any situation where she knows what to do better than the others. Faust reminded her that what happened. She still needed to write up a form explaining her actions and the circumstances surrounding them. Yeah, no escape from bureaucracy, even in Limbus company. She gladly would do this as long as Virgilius was right about this. Yi Sang asked if Virgilius bought them any ice cream. Virgilius didn't look amused. Yi Sang noticed this and decided not to bother him any longer. He was curious about the ice cream out of Marlin Port. He then decided to board the bus boat before he really him off. Rodia appreciated the efforts. Yi Sang saw that as more than enough. Probably for the best, as he'd vomited out as soon as Mephistopheles moved. Dante didn't think that Virgilius would understand them anyway, but they asked what those two were up to. Faust translated that as Dante was asking a meaningless question. Clearly she didn't want to provoke Virgilius by asking something that he'd rather not answer right now. Virgilius believed that Dante was picking up too much from the damned dozen. Was he supposed to bring a tub of whale ice cream for everyone? After they continued their voyage across the Great Lake, Gregor offered to take watch, while Ishmael got some rest as the branch facility was still quite a distance away. He's done his fair share of night watches, but his tiredness does not inspire a lot of confidence. Ishmael was not going to move from her station regardless. She looked like she was waiting for something to happen, or she was deathly afraid of something happening. She didn't leave the telescope installed by Rain. Likely installed before their voyage started. Woods approved of this, as letting your guard down can let your comrades down. Dante asked what her thoughts on this were, but she simply stated that Virgilius has already dealt with it, and if Dante won't take action, as far as she's concerned, that's the end of it. She'd also make it clear that she wouldn't hesitate to clash with Ishmael again, should she need to. She wouldn't continue this pointless tussle, as that would lower morale. Dante saw this as good enough. Gregor reminded them that they're in the middle of a lake As long as they stick to the laws of the Great Lake, he doesn't see them getting... Then Ishmael alerted them to something ahead, and he completed his sentence by saying, "Attacked by anything?" Which clearly wasn't the case this time. Charon asked Ishmael if it was time to drift again. Ishmael said no. It was too late. That trick won't help them there. They hid themselves in an artificial fog of war. They're the targets. Virgilius understood that it's only a matter of time before they catch up, now that they know their location. He basically told them to use their best judgment with this. Ishmael recommended that they board their ship and take the fight to them. Dante wanted to make sure, asking if she sees this as the best course of action, if they want to save their ship. According to her expertise, it was. And so Dante left it to her. Based on that, Ishmael hoped to continue to hear him making wise choices like that. Well, it makes sense as you understand the area better than pretty much all of them. So of course they'll give the go-ahead, as you're starting to return to form after you almost... rather, after your almost deranged moments. Or at least that's how it appears. Dante took a few steps behind the others and watched her. Ishmael told them that they'll hook their ship with harpoons, like they installed with the rest of the modifications, forcing them into melee range, telling someone to grab the helm and turn it on her signal. Rutis understood that someone should be on standby, ready to shut off the engine at the right moment, telling someone to bring some extra rope, and another to wait for her signal inside the wheelhouse. The others followed her rapid and confident instructions when Ishmael threw her razor-sharp harpoon towards the ship of the Twin Hook Pirates. Dante started to feel that something was off. They were actually working together, even though they were doing it for their own goals, which they would all get to eventually. Dante was wondering if all the times thinking, hoping, and contemplating about their futures together was pointless. It lingered in their head. Then they boarded the pirate ship and fought the Twin Hook Pirates on board. After tearing through the Twin Hook Pirates, one of the last surviving ones was panicking, seeing them as crafty. They were going to board their ship first. Roger said that they've got places to be and things to do. Then Heathcliff demanded that he answer his question, lie or flap his gums meaninglessly and he'll tear the lips off their mugs. Then he asked, "Who said those plonkers?" The panicked pirates then made it clear that it was due to them pummeling Smee earlier, seeing their very breath bringing shame to their syndicate. They were ordered by Captain Hook to not leave the Great Lake alive. Heathcliff saw this as marvellous. He liked seeing good camaraderie. Clearly something you've been starved of since being on that bus. And then he was angered by him flapping his gums meaninglessly. The panicked pirate told him that their threats won't rattle them. They're novices to this. Telling that to the stupid sons of bachelors. Roger, annoyed by that clingy bunch, remarked that they spared Smee's life and this is the thanks they get? Well, I doubt that she'll receive the same mercy next time. Sinclair asked if that's what Smee meant by them regretting it if they... Ishmael disagreed. as she was systematically finishing off the rest of the pirates. She saw their juvenile whining as not from shame. The panicked pirate didn't know what she was talking about. Then she continued by saying that when all your mates are dead, consumed, manipulated, and led into the meat grinder by the collective insanity of a madwoman, when you're left in the endless void where the only sound is the beating of your heart. And then another pirate was about to beg for mercy, and she killed him as well. And then she continued her rant by saying that when you realise that your heart continues to beat because it's still desperately, pathetically clinging to life despite all that, that's when you feel shame. When the panicked pirate remarks on the sorry state of their boats, guessing that they have no clue what they were doing there, trying to bargain with them to tell them what they need to know if they'd spare his life. He'd even put in a good word to Captain Hook for them. Nothing to lose there, telling Ishmael that there won't be anyone to put in a good word if she kills him. Ishmael was silent, giving nothing away. The panicked pirate believed that he was getting to her. Getting through to her, even. Telling her that if she spares him, they might just sail out of the lake alive. Then she killed that. Tired of listening to an inane, meaningless pleas. This was the last one. So they went back to their ship, leaving the ship filled with the dead. The sails fluttering with the forlorn dance in the wind. As for the artificial fog of war, that's likely some kind of technology developed to mask their approach. After their encounter with the Twin Hook pirates, they continued their voyage across the Great Lake towards the branch facility ship. Dante was bothered by something. It was weird that they all seemed so certain that if they kept going that way, they'd run into some huge disaster. Masson saw it as nothing of note. It's a byproduct of their firm belief in their advantage over them. A belief that was crushed when they crushed them. He observed that they installed numerous spikes on the lower side of their hull. Wiltis asked if they were not for ramming into other vessels. She's heard of such tactics in naval combats. Masson noted that they were installed far too low in the water to be useful as a means of ramming another ship, due to the metal's level of corrosion at the keel of the boat. The spikes have been installed recently. Wiltis asked how he saw the keel of that boat. Masson answered by saying that the water was clearer up close than it appeared from a distance. Honglu believed that they were trying to stop something from climbing up to the ship. Gregor didn't think that any fish would swim blindly into the keel of the boat. They're not birds crashing into windows. Roger thought that it might be nothing, possibly a good luck charm, due to how superstitious they can be. Well, there are crazier religions out there, so the religion of fools is also followed. Gregor was starting to regret them not taking pilots with them, asking if Faust knew anything about this. She didn't. The most they could do is make sure that they didn't violate any laws of the Great Lake. Their journey continued without incident, using the variable coordinates that pilots provided, paranoia of the unknown weighing heavily upon them. After a considerable amount of time, Faust then told Ultis that they had to steer the ship portside, and this surprised Ultis, who was looking ahead from the bow of the ship. It hadn't been an hour since she had told her that they'll have to cross that zone in a straight line. Faust told her that they're falling short of their target speed, They'll be struck by the next zone's waves as soon as they exited the current one. Ortis asked if it was the damned law of that zone. Faust confirmed this. They were behind schedule due to their encounter with the Twin Hook pirates, and so the variable coordinates pointed to a different route. Ortis asked how much time they'll waste there. Faust determined that the necessary roundabout path will cost them 3 more days. Ortis didn't like this. She was discontented and turned to Dante. She had a plan to accelerate their operation and increase the chances of success of securing and rescuing the lives of the LCCB agents. Something that won't be served by spending 3 more days at sea. Dante asked what her plan was. The plan was they keep going forward. She slowly raised the acceleration lever, and this alarmed Faust, and alarmed Ishmael even more. Virgilius wanted to observe before deciding to intervene. Ishmael was angered by Ortis, asking if she was nuts. They'd be sailing right into the waves. Was she aware of that? Ortis was fully aware of the waves. She's not as ignorant of the Great Lake as Ishmael might believe, and notes that Ishmael's experience in weathering and conquering waves as well. Ishmael said that this was because they were unavoidable, because she and her crew lacked enough information to take a roundabout path. She never knowingly sailed into them before. Ortis noted that she still prevailed. Well, she wouldn't be there if she didn't. Ishmael was silent, unable to argue back. Ortis then continued by saying that this was also before she had someone to bring her back to life. It's well within their capabilities. Then there's the added benefit of accelerating their mission and the higher probability of rescuing the LCCB agents that Dante and a few others wanted to do. She also noted that she was impatient to get on with it, mocking her by asking if she was yearning for a 3-day sunbathing break. Ishmael didn't bother to respond to this sarcastic remark. She observed the wave, based on the tide's odor, speed, and color. The lake that they were heading towards was the blue whirling lake of murk and fish reek. She's heard of it, but she hasn't suffered it before. But many ships have encountered it. Many are lying at the bottom of the lake. Clearly, not many encounter this wave and live to speak of it. Ortis saw this as fine as long as they don't join the dead. Sinclair didn't like the sound of that, suggesting that they take a quick look, and if they feel it's too much for them, they can go back the way they came. Ishmael told him that there's no such thing as going back in that lake. Faust left the decision up to Dante, who wanted to go through with Ortis' plan. Faust understood this, announcing that they're crossing the zone's borders to the target lake. Ishmael saw this as insanity, and yet hoping that Ortis was right about this. Right on cue, there was a flash in the sky. Dante saw that there was thunder and rain, and the seas became more turbulent, as did Honglu. Liu noted that they were in the eye of the storm. Dante didn't understand. It was clear moments ago. How could it? Ishmael announced that the waves were already there. Virgilius saw this as an entertaining display, telling Charon that this was a good opportunity to test that function. Charon then switched Mephistopheles to Endure mode, which extended the ship. It's when the reality of the situation, to be more precise, began to sink in for Dante. What had happened, what happens to, and what will happen to everyone, and everything that entered that lake without permission for what's to come. Dante asked Ishmael what do they do now. Ishmael then spoke an adage to those uninitiated in sailing, what they hear before they set their first sail. There's but one thing you can count on if you find yourself in an unfamiliar lake whose waves are alien to you. And as she says this, a colossal wave rises to its crest before them. Ryuju said SIC. Securing craft? Ready your weapons if you want to delay the inevitable. Ishmael continued as a large hand with holes in it grabbed the ship. That's not your sailing prowess, your far-seeing eyes of a pathfinder, or the unbreakable bond between you and your mates. As mermaids revealed themselves, she said that many sailors fail to endure this trial and instead choose to become sacrifices to the depth of the lake. Sinclair, noting that something strange was climbing onto their ship. Well, something was climbing onto it anyway. Both Ishmael and Urtis said, "Trust nothing but your own resolve to hold steadfast in the face of terror, in the face of calamity." And Ishmael finished this by saying, "Though the raging lake may remain indifferent to the wall of your meager existence." Then they fought the mermaids that was tethered to what was holding onto their ship. They were numerous, but they would fight them regardless. There was a brief lull in the assault. Yisang had no words to describe it. Ishmael called the unfathomable entities inhabiting the depths of the lakes whales, and those that emerged from them are called mermaids. She identified this one as the whale of the porous hand. She was hoping to avoid this one. Dante asking if that was one of the whales that they were talking about in Yukon. Sinclair asked if mermaids raided ships as well. He read about them once as a child, but they didn't look anything like how they did in books. Well, the versions in books are likely the sweetened versions of how they actually are, and Hong Lu still remembered the horrible bedtime stories about them that his brother used to read to him. Seriously? Jia Huan really was that addictive? Vindictive, rather? Yes, that's a better word. Gregor remembering that they used to make perfumes out of them. And they still do, based on... well, I would expect that they still do, considering that Virgilius mentioned that earlier. Roger suggested that Virgilius assist them regarding this for once. Gregor found this to be a ridiculous idea, as he spectated like a bystander when they got slaughtered back in the K-Corp checkpoint. He didn't even blink. Yes, the time when Don Quixote made a hole in the barrier dividing the two lines at the checkpoints. Because she couldn't tolerate injustice, and then, in the end, Siegfried kills all of the damn dozen, and even when they were brought back, they were still considered punished, and as far as K-Corp was concerned, that was the end of it. Honglu said that he did wave at them, but he couldn't wave back because his wrists were getting snapped in half. What the is wrong with you? It's possible that Honglu has Williams syndrome, which includes hypersociability as part of it. The same kind of hypersociability that domestic dogs have. Or it could be something far more environmental. Virgilius told them that he won't sit idly by as Mephistopheles sinks, if it ever comes to that, but he'll only take action under a very particular set of circumstances, such as all of them being dead and the enemy being about to tear Dante apart. Dante was asking if he was serious right now. Virgilius seemed to guess what Dante was talking about and told them that he couldn't allow them to take the company's assets right in front of his eyes. He'll be the last resort, who will only act if the damned does them all dead and Dante was unable to safely invert time. Rodia was starting to question his ability, that he might not be as good as they say, suspecting that the stories were told tales. Don Quixote, she advised against saying more, as did the normally impulsive Heathcliff. They both have first-hand experience of what happens when they Virgilius off. Virgilius told them to take them out, welcome them on board, or whatever it takes, it's up to them. They continued the fight against the mermaids after that. After they killed enough, they drove off the whale of the porous hand, making it screech in pain. Ishmael was struggling to catch her breath, asking how many remained. Otis said none. Then the one that Ishmael killed was It was the last one. Dante noticed something was off about the mermaid that crawled out of the whale, a feeling not so different from looking at an abnormality or distortion. Dante asking if the mermaids were human ones. Ishmael realized that she should have explained better. Not every creature that lives in the depths of the Great Lake were called whales. They specifically referred to everything in the Great Lake that can parasitize humans. Whales give birth to mermaids. Dante asking where mermaids came from. Ishmael answered that they're people, devoured by the whales that came from the waves. There's no guarantee that they won't meet the same fate. This was what she meant when she said that Dante could turn the clock back all day, and failed to bring them back. Dante understood now. The waves will be unrelenting, unabating, and Ishmael, who'd already weathered and braved those endless crashing waves, was starting to snap, strand by strand. She has a mission that she can't fail. She'll kill everything that stands in her way, even if she was to stumble, even if every part of her was to fall apart. She'll see it through to the end. Well, if that happens, Dante will reverse the damage. Otis proved of her determination and ferocity when sailing on an adventure, because their voyage is just getting started. Then we zoom out and see how small and insignificant Mephistopheles is, compared to the vastness and otherworldliness of the Great Lake. Each zone a patchwork with its own dangers and properties. An island with a creature swimming around it. A floating island with buildings on it. A typhoon. A giant hole with a boat suspended in it, and many other things. In the vastness of the Great Lake, there is a variety of life beneath the surface. They appear seemingly at random, subject to the laws of the Great Lake. These immense creatures are known as whales. They attack ships that stray within a zone, or linger within one for far too long, which results in those same ships being caught in the waves, which are times when the whales surface to prey on anything that they might encounter. Within the blue whirling lake of murk and fishreek lives the whale of the porous hand. This whale grabs onto ships that appears during its wave, and after the ship is caught in its vaguely human-like grip, creatures that used to be human and parasitized appear out of the holes in it. These are the mermaids. those humans devoured by this whale, their physical connection showing that they are extensions of this whale's will. Each whale varies in its methods, but the purpose is the same. The whale eats its human prey, and they are then changed into mermaids, which it uses to hunt down further prey. Wary travellers that have enough combat proficiency to fight this off would do well to kill the mermaids, as this also brings the whale pain. When enough are killed, the whale is driven away. There are those that actively hunt down the whales and mermaids. The whales are consumed by humans, sometimes as part of an ice cream recipe, much as they do in Marlin ports, while the mermaids that are killed are used to make perfume, apparently from their left fins. That's the end of Act 1. Now we move on to Act 2 of Chapter 5. Until next time. Hail the rabbit!